My parents purchased this farm in 1969. I was about 7 years old and lived here on the same land all that time. They really worked very hard to be able to acquire a piece of property out in the country. I started shifting more into agriculture in general, just farming. My high school yearbook, the very last photograph is me standing up on a tractor plowing an in-row, probably breaking all kinds of safety rules doing that now, but little did we know I would be sitting most of the time. After high school, my dad had heart problems. I started running the farm by myself, kind of out of necessity. Mom would do the bookkeeping, but I did all the work on the farm, the hog operation, and Dad wasn't able to do anything. About 3 years there, I planted all the crops. I was a pretty busy guy. Dad was in the hospital quite a bit, and I went over to see him one time, and he introduced me to one of his nurses.
It wasn't me.
But it was her best friend.
My best friend that I went to nursing school with, she was, he's a nice guy, but I don't want to live in a small town for the rest of my life. She wasn't as interested in him. So then he had asked me to go out, and I was like, sure.
The only real problem we had was she had a jealous ex-boyfriend that was harassing us and wouldn't take no for an answer and ended up stalking us. And it was like he couldn't have his way, so nobody could have his way. He attacked us and tried to kill us. I was shot a couple times and paralyzed, and that started the road of disability in my life.
Turned on the news and listened, and much to my horrified surprise, there was a camera live on the scene in Indianapolis at a shooting. This person they were carrying out and putting in this ambulance was Ed Bell.
Surviving it was just basically a miraculous thing. You know, God just spared me. I was dying and bleeding to death, and I had an experience where the blood just stopped. God stopped me from bleeding to death, and I felt God speak to me and say, I'm not done with you yet. I didn't really get any other marching orders, but that's been an encourager for me, was the fact that I'm here for some sort of purpose. A year later, we had a trial. It wasn't our trial. We were witnesses in the trial for the state of Indiana, and he was found guilty on a couple serious charges, spent 17 and a half years in prison, and that gave us some peace and justice, and we had a chance to try to restart and rebuild our lives. The doctor told me, if you don't get pneumonia, I think you're going to live through this, but he says you're never going to walk, you're never going to have children, and you're never going to be able to pick up a dime with your fingers. I got the use of my fingers back, and it took us 9 years, but we were able to have Nellie. You know, I don't walk, but I figure 2 out of 3, it ain't bad.
People have asked me in the past, when did you realize that your dad was different or that he used a wheelchair? And I don't ever recall a defining moment. I really just felt like this is normal. This is my life, and I never noticed it to be different.
My limitations were normal for her.
She had to be in bib overalls all the time because that's the only way Ed could pick her up.
Grab the straps of her bib overalls. My mom was always sewing buttons back on her straps that I popped off. And she just adapted. When Nellie was little, she got excited when we went to a store because she found out there were stairs because she'd only ridden the elevators. It was a big treat if Mom would take her up the steps because she grew up in elevators. So to her, that was normal. And then along with the trauma too.
The traumatic event that caused my dad's disability is definitely a secondary trauma that I've lived with. So I don't have that firsthand experience, but I do see how that has shaped their life.
All that trauma has greatly impacted us, some for the better and probably a lot for the worse. I almost died several times there. Just surviving was a challenge. My lungs collapsed. There was a really tough day there where they were wanting to put me on a vent.
I told him no, and as a nurse, I know that was probably very foolish to tell his parents not to put him on a ventilator, but everything inside me, my faith was saying don't do that, and so I didn't listen to the years of the nursing experience and what I was taught. I was listening to what I felt God was telling me to do, because I thought he would never come off. And so I laid there on the floor, and I would say, you've got to breathe, take another breath, because he had lost that ability to breathe.
Then I had to make the mental adjustments to paralysis. My dad was instrumental in that. The only guy that could chew me out would have been my dad. He's like, you're not doing your job. And I'm like, Dad, I can't do my job. And he goes, no, you don't understand. You need to get well. Well, I'm never going to get well. And he goes, well, then you need to get as well as you can so you can figure out what you're going to be able to do. And he said, if you're not doing that, you're being lazy and you're not doing your part. You're letting all these people down. I didn't like it when I heard it, but it was, as I chewed on it, I was like, he's right. My number one job was to get as well as I could. That took about 1.5 years. And then it was, okay, now what do I do? My parents traded off one of the tractors and got the smallest tractor you could buy. And their thinking wasn't for work, it was more mental therapy. I got on that little tractor and it was like the best medicine in the world for me. When I was on the tractor, I would forget that I had limitations and disabilities. I also learned I could still be productive. I had to learn to do things differently. That was before I met AgrAbility, Breaking New Ground, and that's where the life really started changing there when I found out that I wasn't the only one. We were economically wiped out when I got hurt. We saw in the newspapers they were giving away a Doberman. Consequently, we fell in love with the breed. So we had to litter puppies, and there was such a demand for puppies. We were actually able to take our daughter to Disney World with puppy money from that first litter of puppies. And that was like, wow, this could be a thing.
If there's a problem that you have to solve, it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to get creative with how to solve that problem.
Some of the things I did is I took all of his shirts and I took all the buttons off all his buttoned up shirts. I got almost like bozo buttons, and I would put those on all his shirts so that he could button his shirts by himself. And I got shoes that were Velcro, because then he could Velcro his shoes.
I knew I couldn't really do the pigs, so I actually spent time in a grocery store going up and down aisles. What things could I raise on my farm that nobody else was raising or growing? I could mess everything up and still had a chance of winning because I didn't have competition. And at that time, strawberries, nobody was raising strawberries, and it fit the bill. And I had never grown a strawberry. Mom never had them in the garden. Only thing I knew about a strawberry was how to eat it. And we planted 4 acres. That was really foolish. But we also had the attitude, it's like, nobody's trying to kill us. And what are we going to do? Break my neck? I've already done that. So, let's go for it.
And some of my earlier memories were of our strawberry season. Sometimes it looked a little different in our family, but we just worked together to get it done.
I grew up in the city, so he had to teach me all this. Going to the farmers markets and selling all these things. He grew the things and I took him to the farmers markets and sold them. And then we started with the strawberries.
Disability is like a stump in your field. If you dig it out if you can, but if you can't, you plow around it and you still are productive.
It's not easy. Marriage in itself isn't easy.
Yeah.
With a disability on top of that. When you really love somebody, you're there in the good and the bad. Some people leave when it gets bad. I worked on the neuro floor and I worked with spinal cord injuries and head injuries. I knew what his future was.
It's okay to lean into things being difficult and accepting that, and joy can coexist with it. To use the word and, because it doesn't discredit the difficulties that you're going through. You can have and. We can have both at the same time. This is rough, and we're together. I knew that this would be a place that would always be part of my life, and I'd love to be a part of it, but I didn't know that building a house and living on this land would be what my husband and I chose to do. But that's the path that God led us, and I'm so grateful for that, because what I want for my kids is for them to see those problems and recognize that they come from a legacy of warriors and people who have fought really hard through some really difficult times.
You have to learn to redefine success and look at things in a different way. If you're gonna no, I'm gonna be the way I was, when your limitations come into conflict with that, you're going to pay a price. One of the better pieces of advice I got early on was that you don't choke on the elephant. You can eat an elephant, but the only way you can eat an elephant is one little bite at a time. If you try to eat an entire elephant, you're just going to get smothered and crushed. So if you feel like you're choking on your life and you're just being overwhelmed, you're biting off too much. You just got to back up and take it a day at a time. Well, there's days where that's too much. You got to take an hour at a time or a minute at a time. In those early days, when I'm in intensive care, you'd come and visit me. It was one breath at a time. She literally sat by my side and she's like, you got to take another deep breath. You can easily become overwhelmed, and psychologically that alone can kill you. So you have to learn to eat the elephant one little bite at a time. Instead of how am I going to get around? I can't drive my stick shift truck. What am I going to do for a living? What about these bills? That's going to kill you if you let it. Right now, you just need to learn to brush your teeth on your own so your wife doesn't have to do it for you. If you come to my farm and you follow me around, you're going to like, well, that's really weird. Why do you do it that way? It's like, because I can't do it like you, but I can do it this way. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm sure people driving by think that what I do is just loopy sometimes, but it's because it's the only way I can do it. Or it's a way I figured out I can do it. And you got to be open to that to make change.